Press that. All right, we ready to go live? Going live?
You've already pressed the button.
I have. Well, good afternoon. It's still going live. Good afternoon and welcome to the Greater Westminster live stream with our special guest.
Hey, everybody.
It's Ricci.
Yay.
If you saw our little Instagram story about an hour ago, we do have not just Ricci, but we also have the Z9. We have, don't know if you can see that, 100 to 400 and
24 to 120.
24 120.
So it's Ricci and friends.
Yeah.
Yes, it is very much so. They're kind of in the way of me reaching the laptop, but anyway.
To hold this
we'll
We
do
need the laptop, we can move it away. Yeah.
I am going to be reading the comments as we go. I have to say a massive thank you to Fred, who's already contributed to the coffee fund.
Thank you.
Very, very much appreciated. Goat. Greatest of all time, Ricci Goat.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
I think that's the first
Big
I've been
goat.
referred to as the greatest of
Yeah.
all time. So I appreciate that.
I'm assuming that's what he
I
means.
mean, I hope so, yeah.
Well,
They're good at climbing mountains.
that's the thing. And then Roy's always putting kangaroos in there, so I'm
Kangaroos.
confused now.
Goats,
Yeah.
kangaroos.
Is that because he's from Australia?
Yes, exactly that.
Broccoli
Yeah.
and beetroots.
So we have lots and lots of you joining us from all over today. Hope those of you in the US didn't mind our front cover. It was just because we honestly just had a head shot of Ricci and we're like full body shot. So
I'm always the problem.
we kind of embraced it and thought we'll just put our heads on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, we don't think too much about our covers.
We really don't. So you've already posted some great questions. You also put some great questions on our Nikon report, didn't you?
Oh yeah, the came out yesterday.
Yeah. So we've sort of, what have we done?
Well, we
Culled them?
aggregated them in
Yes.
one place,
Sort of.
put them into different topics like AF, sensor, battery life, and then we'll ask Ricci about it.
Yes, exactly. So we are going to address your questions as they come, so feel free to post them. A lot of you, I'm going to just address the elephant in the room to talk about another animal. That is the Z6 and Z7 firmware. A few of you were mentioning it. I think we'll do our tests and then talk about it
Yeah, absolutely.
next week.
Shall we do it now?
No.
Yeah, we'll just talk about firmware instead
Okay,
of talking.
so put Z9 somewhere. Here's Z6. Let's update the firmware.
We'll update the firmware live. No, we'll do our test because Con and I both use the Z6 and it would be nice to see what differences those make. But we will talk about them next week on the Nikon report, I guess.
Absolutely. So it's going to be a whole hour of Nikon financials and 5 seconds of firmware updates.
Great. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much to Vince and to Jeremy for your contributions to the Coffee Fund as well. We will definitely be partaking of that later. So, Ricci.
Hello.
Hello. You've had, and we're all right.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
You've been keeping busy?
Yeah, you know, just Nikon keeping us busy.
Something
yeah.
happened and
Exactly.
you've got loads of pre-orders. And
That's
Yeah.
right.
I mean,
yeah.
I already booked my holidays, so yeah.
You're like ready to
am
go.
I right in saying that there was a publication that like quoted you on the number of pre-orders or something?
That's right.
Amateur
Yes.
photographer, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It was quite literally the release was insane, I think, were the
Right.
words that we used. Yeah. So it has been slightly intense. We've been working very, very, very hard to try and appease everybody.
Yeah, we should have like 24-hour stream of our sales room where people are picking up the phones, you know?
So yes, because they're 24 hours a day. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, hello, Ryan Troy is with us. Saying
Oh, hi,
hello.
Ryan.
Hi, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining
Still have
us.
to catch up.
So you've had the Z9 for a while.
A while.
Yes. And you've been putting it through its paces.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
was.
So for how long did you have it? 2 years? 3 years?
2 years. Not quite that long, but long enough. There's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is obviously, just testing in general. The second one is also to train other people. There isn't, a massive number of people that you can use as a go-to that have technical knowledge on products. So it's always good to get those cameras into the hands of the right people as early as possible to then tell other people about that camera and other photographers about that camera, what they might be shooting with and so on.
And at that point, the camera's already been finalized.
No.
No.
There's a lot of stuff that still changes.
Okay.
There's still stuff that's changing now. So, even the cameras that are out there, they're obviously all pre-production. There's still things that will change before production units arrive.
So were you saying like daily reports on the camera on some sort of bugs and features?
Yeah, I
et
wouldn't
cetera?
say it's daily, but
hourly?
Every minute.
Every 30 seconds.
The Nikon WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
Everybody.
No, I wouldn't say that it's that regular, but there is definitely a lot that's changing over time, and even the stuff that you've seen from pre-production cameras can change. It happens.
So let's just look at the timeline. So you had it around Tokyo Olympics then?
when were the Olympics?
What was it?
He wasn't there.
No, I wasn't at the
No, but
Olympics.
around that time. I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out because obviously
Summer.
photographers use the cameras at the Tokyo Olympics. Did you have the camera already around that time? But,
I mean, so it varies. Different regions get different numbers of cameras. They get different priorities. There's stuff that's shot quite early. There's stuff that is done quite late. I can't really give you a specific date, but
tell us about the prototype.
12 o'clock
Yeah.
on the 3rd of,
But let's say, okay, you had the pretty much kind of, final, prototype camera. So, it's kind of 99% finalized.
Sure.
So internally, did you hear about previous prototypes? Were they very different, from what we have right now?
yeah, I mean, so there's always changes. I mean, I'm sure that everyone would know that to develop a camera, it takes years.
Yes.
It's not like this is all thrown together in 3 months.
yeah.
So there's the point at which that we start testing these cameras properly and they start going out to photographers. They're pretty close to what you would expect them to be.
Yeah, that makes
there are
sense.
things that are changed late on, but there's
All right.
nothing,
All right, give us some
Nothing
lore.
major.
Give us something we don't know. Let's say, like maybe first prototype had 90 megapixel sensor, and then or something, or they had a shutter,
Like
mechanical
all of-
shutter, and they removed it or something.
all of that level of prototyping, or where Nikon decide to go with a particular product, that's all decided in an office in Japan. So, yeah.
Okay, so the kind of thing that might change would be something more internal, firmware related, maybe layouts of stuff.
There has been in the past with other cameras, there have been hardware changes, but it's normally at least within a year away from launch. If that
Right.
makes sense.
Wow. Yeah, so it's quite a bit of time because obviously there was so much speculation of, oh, well, Nikon are waiting to see what Canon do or what Sony do or what, it's before because everybody was obviously waiting for the Z9, but
Yeah.
actually it's all decided beforehand. So
Yeah, I mean, Nikon never talk about how long they develop products for. They're not really,
fair enough. All right. Well, Mike from Florida says, I want to say that the Nikon community has done a really good job of bringing the Z9 into market, which is very true.
Yeah.
And Woody Mallory from Virginia said, love the excitement around the Z9. I think that is one thing that we can all very safely agree on is that it's a very exciting
It is.
camera. Even if you're not about to part with your hard-earned cash and buy one, I think it just, it kind of sets the trend for Nikon going forward, right?
yeah. It's an exciting time.
Yes.
A very exciting time.
Yeah, price is so aggressive. That's the thing, because I remember us talking about D6. That was 2 years ago, yeah? So
2019?
2019? Before COVID, yeah? So
2020. When did it come out? 2020.
2020. All I remember, we had,
Last year doesn't
we had an
count.
announcement video, and you look at the feedback, and it was kind of mixed feedback, and half of them hated it because it was expensive camera for sports photographers and wasn't for them, and half of them saying, well, where's my Z, whatever, flagship camera, etc., etc. And then now we have Z9, and it's just like 99% of people saying, I love the camera.
The
Yeah.
key thing about the D6 is that a lot of people misunderstood what the D6 was. Like the D6 is a very specialist tool for those people who want low megapixel, fast speed, great autofocus.
We're going to do a video that we just call D6 Deeply Misunderstood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Like the D6 autofocus is incredibly good
Yeah.
compared to a D5 even, a D850 and a D500, but not many people got the chance to experience that.
No. And also then all the sporting events being cancelled or delayed.
Yeah.
It wasn't the D6's year, let's put it that way. It was not the right year.
Yeah, wrong timing, absolutely.
I have to say thank you to David, May, Studio, Renee, and Ryan for your contributions to the Coffee Fund. Thank you so much. Don't think I missed anyone else. No, they get very upset if I miss them. So make sure I acknowledge everyone.
Everyone
Thank
is
you.
important.
Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Okay, so we do have some more techie questions, but we did come prepared with the list of questions.
We have a
So
spreadsheet
do you-
with things in it. Well, look, I mean, I just want to ask you like something that we always look into Nikon reports. So Nikon Rumors reported production figures of about 3,500 cameras and 40,000 pre-orders. So are those figures more or less correct? Are they close enough? Well, obviously, if you can't share those figures, that's absolutely fine. But
I have no idea about pre-orders.
Yeah.
You guys know more
okay,
about
so
pre-orders.
what
I
about,
think 40,000 is accurate, though.
Yeah.
I do, because if you think
I'm just trying to figure out how Chinese social media website can knows how many pre-orders we've got as a company. So that's that's my question.
Well, I think that if you look at how many, because they don't go off how many orders we personally have, but they might go off how many orders have been put into Nikon, because obviously we've ordered a certain number of cameras from Nikon. Every other dealer has ordered a certain number.
Always
of cameras.
follow the money.
Yes, exactly. So that's how they would.
Okay.
They would know.
What about production numbers?
Yeah, so like the amount that Nikon would produce, like the initial number was like 35,000. That's not true.
Okay. So 3,500, is it more or less?
I'd probably
correct
say
figure?
that's a more realistic number, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, let's
you have
everyone cross your fingers and toes. that's all I can say, that we will get decent allocation. Pedro very much wants this read out because he's posted it many times, so I'm just going to share it with the group. I'm concerned about the use of my gimbal and the size of the Z9. Have you had any experience using the Z9 on gimbals, tripods,
No,
etc.?
I've not put it on a gimbal. I have put it on lots of tripods, but I've not put it on a gimbal.
Okay.
I mean, realistically, it's no heavier than a full-size DSLR.
Yeah.
It's a lot lighter than a full-size DSLR. There's a lot of people who have used full-size DSLRs on gimbals.
Yeah.
So there will be a gimbal out there that will take the weight of that. Absolutely. Just depends on what gimbal you've got.
Yeah. So Pedro, it's going to be down to if you've got a gimbal, for example, that would suit the size and weight of a D5 or a D6, then you will
be fine.
You'd probably be fine with the
Yeah.
Z9. If it's designed for a Z50, then possibly not. So yeah, maybe. Let's see.
So it's what, 1.3 kilos, yeah. So if you add the, let's say, 24-70 lens on it, so you're looking at 2 kilos load. So if your gimbal, which it should be like something like DJI full-size gimbal, should handle those weights, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like a full-size gimbal will be fine. If it's a smaller one, then obviously it might cause you problems.
Yeah.
It's always about balancing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as we found out, who is it that have just created an L plate for it?
Well, this Kirk, and actually the moment we published this, Small Rig emailed me as well and saying we have another L plate. So I think, Small Rig is going to be about $90. Kirk is probably going to be about $200 or something like that.
Yeah, and then undoubtedly before too long, Three-Legged Thing will bring something out and, really right stuff. So yes, there'll be plenty of accessories coming out for it, I'm pretty sure. Now, okay, so... Sorry, I'm trying to read the questions. Where's your list of questions?
Well, while you're looking at the questions, I'm going to ask you like a very simple question. Is asked, does Z9 has focus stacking like the 850? And I assume it does, but obviously it's nowhere mentioned in any literature.
Literally, if I find it. One thing as well that some people haven't covered, so you can see it there.
Yeah, focus shift shooting.
So one thing that doesn't really get covered all that much is that the menu is completely different.
It is.
Yeah.
It is very different. In fact,
it's still the same layout, so
Yeah.
you're not going to get lost in a new menu, but it is a new menu.
I like those little toggles.
Yeah, so you have like a toggle switch the way you can turn things on or off instead of having to go in and turn it on or off.
Yeah.
It's much faster and much nicer to use.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that really caused me problems, and I've only just got used to it now, is that the photo shooting menu is now at the top.
I know.
Whereas it used to be the second one down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was confusing me last time because I thought it was playback menu and it wasn't there.
And we're like, where is it? We actually
Yeah.
plugged. We had Rob Z9 for the stream last week, not last week, the week before, and we plugged it in so that the viewers could see the back. And we were like, where are things?
And they were there. Since I asked you about focus stacking, pixel shift is my personal thing. Sure. I always, I like that the other companies have pixel shift functionality in their cameras. Will we ever see anything like this? Do
I'm
you
not
know
sure
of anything?
I know that it's a highly requested feature. I've not seen it done in other cameras well enough yet, personally. That's a personal opinion for me. I would, like the dream is I would want something that does like pixel shift and then makes the entire raw file in camera.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And I guess Z9 is the first camera that can process such amount of data.
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly have no idea whether or not that will happen or not.
But Nikon is aware.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of feedback for that. I think the problem is that it doesn't work very well if you've got anything that moves.
Yeah.
So, landscape is kind of out the window if you're shooting waterfalls, coastal
So
stuff.
very still subjects, probably, on the tripod or copy stand. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sticking questions at the bottom so that I don't forget them. So,
Okay.
because there are some questions that need to be answered, but that I'm going to lose because there's so many comments. So I'm writing them down. I'm great multitasking. So now in terms of the battery, there was a little bit of confusion. So can you use the earlier batteries on the Z9? Can you use the 18A, B,
So
C?
the earlier batteries work, you just lose the functionality of charging in camera.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But in
And
terms...
also, obviously, the battery life is not as good.
No, sure, on the older ones.
Yeah.
So Ilario, to answer you on that, I mean, on the high-end products, the ENEAL 18 has been around since the D4. So basically for the last, when did the D4 come out? 2014? 20, so around then. So at least for the last 6-7 plus years, we've had the same battery for the high-end cameras and the same battery for the mid-range to low-end cameras, and then obviously the smaller cameras have their own batteries just because of the size of them.
I mean, I would say that like the battery system is technically standardized because, like you say, it's still an 18.
Yeah.
It's just there are subtle differences with the different capacity, and then when it comes to in-camera charging and so on. So.
Yeah.
I got a couple more questions on battery life. So David Osborne asked, in terms of usage, how much video or how many exposures might we expect? I appreciate it depends on image formats, but some ballpark figures would be nice. Thanks.
So from a stills photography point of view, it's like ridiculous, depending on how you shoot it. So I used my Z9 for about, well, how many days was it? Maybe about 3 or 4 days of shooting kingfishers.
Yeah.
And I was easily pulling in maybe 20, 30,000 exposures.
Wow.
And not killing a battery, but that's shooting at 20 frames per second, right?
That's
So
impressive.
you can easily get into thousands of exposures if you're continuously shooting shot after shot after shot.
That's pretty incredible.
I mean, I would go as far as to say, and this is just based on my own testing, I'd go as far as to say that you'd easily see like 3,000, 4,000 shots.
Okay, and for video work, have you done as much video work?
Yeah, when it comes to video, there's a couple of other limitations before battery life. So the size of your memory card, especially if you're filming at 8K,
Yes.
is always important. And I have been able to record quite lengthy periods of time at 8K, and it's either the card that gives me the problem before the battery does.
Right.
Yeah, I guess we will come back to memory cards as well, isn't it? So
We
at
will.
some point.
Yeah. If anyone's tested all the memory cards, it's you.
That's true. Yeah, you've got them all pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Now, Traveler Nick asks, could you ask Ricci about the USB power delivery PD support? Specifically, can I run the camera off USB PD, not just charge the internal battery? So if what the requirements, what the voltage, etc. So power banks with the USB-C port, can you?
You'd still need to have the battery in the camera,
Yeah.
but it will technically just run from that power. I think you might see, I don't know, I've not tested it plugged in over a long period of time, but I think you might see a slight battery drain over time.
Right.
Everything that I've seen, when it's powered, it's charging
Yeah.
whilst I'm using it.
Right.
Okay.
So it's increasing.
Yeah, so that kind of like hot charging function
Yeah.
exists. You can use it as it goes, which is good for video.
Yeah.
Also good for if you're doing something like time lapse or anything over a long period of time. Astrophotography, if you're connected to a mains and you're outside for long periods of time staring at the sky.
And in terms of power bank size, so would you recommend to go with like 20,000 or like the
Yeah, I mean, it
20?
depends on how long you're away for.
Okay.
But as long as it's PD compliant, then yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
There are a couple that Nikon recommend, but I can't remember what they are. They generally tend to be like the Anchor.
The
PD.
Anchor one is recommended. The Air and X software that they released, they recommend Anchor USB-C to Lightning adapter, which I'm surprised about. But yeah,
Generally, when Nikon recommends something like that, it's because that's what they've done all their testing on, and it just means that that's a product that they know that works. Rather than there might be other good products out there. It's just that they've not had chance to use them.
fantastic.
Well, when we've got one that we can test and we've got a few power banks and things, we can always give it a whirl. Or we can leave that test to you for an otherwise idle moment. I must say, Colin said, I think this will be my last live stream this year because he's going mining in John Hughes country. So Colin, we will miss you on the live, but we hope that you'll be able to catch up later
Colin
on.
Murphy.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
have fun, Colin.
Yes, exactly. Well, hope you can. And someone did ask, said, who is Ricci? So I thought, well, we should definitely address that. Who are you, Ricci? It's a fundamental question.
I'm a person.
That's a good start. Okay.
So my normal kind of everyday job is just a Nikon school trainer. So
Not just a Nikon school trainer, but yes, that is one of your many vocations.
There's not many of us. There's only 2 of us in the UK. So there's myself, and then Neil is the other Nikon school trainer. and we run all of the Nikon school courses in the UK.
Yes.
I see. And in your spare fun time, you release some videos on YouTube as well.
Yeah, so everything that's like YouTube related is obviously all my personal work. So,
Yeah. So that channel is Ricci Talks for those of you that have missed that. There are a couple of other questions that I've put down the bottom that may be related to another subject. So if you want to carry on rolling through.
All right, well, let's move on to the sensor then. So Peter T asks, I would be interested in the color rendition and the dynamic of the new sensor compared to D6, D850. I would also add Z6 and Z7 Mark IIs as well. So what would you say about color science and also dynamic range?
So like everything that I've seen so far, like D6 was the best camera for out of camera rendition of, you know, colors, white balance accuracy. D6 was just the best camera that Nikon's ever made for that. Z9 is just as good at that, if not improved, because they've improved auto white balance. They've improved the ability for the camera to get a very accurate white balance and color rendition. In terms of dynamic range, from what I've been told, it's as good as Z7 II D850 dynamic range.
This is an interesting one because I've seen quite a few comments online stating basically that stacked sensor has an issues with dynamic range compared to the regular type sensor. So can you clarify a little bit more? So just to read the quote, it says, everyone states that stacked sensor have certain disadvantages compared to non-stacked sensors, but I do not find much content on this topic related to Z9. Is this true, or is it some sort of, you know, just fad really on the internet?
It's because you've never seen a Nikon stacked sensor before.
Here we go.
You know, I'm aware that, you know, stacked sensors, sometimes they prioritize speed over picture quality, but I'm honestly just not really seeing that. I am keeping in the back of my mind that I'm seeing a pre-production unit, and raw files up until production units can still change. So stuff that's out there with raw files already, that couldn't change. Processors of raw files and so on changes. So you have to be wary of that. But for everything I can see, the picture quality is actually really surprisingly good. Because I was in the same ballpark. I was like, am I still going to just want to shoot with a Z7 II for like landscape stuff? And am I still going to either want to shoot with like a D850 because and so on? But actually, it's so sharp.
Really?
Okay,
That's
so
really good to know.
D850 and Z7 users, don't be afraid.
Don't worry. I have to just say thank you to everyone who has joined us this afternoon. We've hit 400 views. Please do give us a like, because we only have 84 likes. It's very sad. If you give us a like, then, you know, YouTube thinks that we're
380 views as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it was more. It's 399.
Come on.
Also, excuse me, I have to say a massive, massive thank you to David for your contribution to the Coffee Fund, who said, alas, poor D780, I knew it. Becky, a camera of infinite focus of most excellent video. Anyway, thank you for that little Shakespeare play. And thank you to Randall for your contribution to the Coffee Fund as well. Very, very much appreciated. And someone also mentioned something about actuation counts on the Z9. Now, it doesn't have a mechanical shutter, so we don't actually have to worry about shutter actuations because it's all electronic now. So I don't even think that they put a tested up to, because there's no mechanical shutter.
That's one of the selling points that Nikon was quite vocal about, is that it just shoots.
It just keeps going.
And there doesn't need to be like a tested mechanical shutter. So.
Yeah. So in the future, when we get secondhand Z9s, we won't be putting actuation counts.
You know, I'm thinking about us as dealers, because we buy secondhand cameras as trade-in based on mileage. So how many shutter actuation cameras taken? I think it will still stay the same, but actually there's a lot less parts to wear out inside the camera.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, you can still get a shutter count from it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have an effect to the mechanical part.
No, it's more like, you know, it's like mileage on an electric car.
Yeah, like buying a car. You know, it's like you always look at the mileage, and that's the base. You know, that's the price you give basically.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of people who are asking for when your review on the 24-120 is going to come out.
Soon. I've just not had it that long, so I did a very short video with one that I had hands-on for like 10 minutes, and then this one I've just not had for that long. So I've been able to shoot some stuff with it and shoot some comparisons. So it will probably be up in the next couple of days, maybe next week.
Okay, fair enough.
Whenever I'm not doing stuff.
When you're not here, or you know,
exactly.
we won't hold you
soon.
to it.
But yeah, everything so far I've been really impressed with.
Quick question: what movie are you promoting today?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which video?
But actually, Igor Bykov asked early in the stream, how good is the build quality of 24 to 120? It feels really good.
It does. It's actually smaller and lighter, I noticed, than the F-mount version, which was always one of my kind of go-to lenses for travel. It's not as heavy, but it doesn't feel less robust.
I think
if
it
you know
feels
what I mean.
better, personally.
Yeah,
You know
well,
my-
that's impressive.
You know my
'cause
opinion on
how much
24
you
to
hate
120.
that lens. So yes, I'm very excited to see how that one performs in comparison. The 2470 f4 is such a good lens.
Like so I've compared this against the 24 to 70 2.8 and the 2.8 stopped down to f4, and I'm struggling to see a difference.
Ooh,
You're talking about S version.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
them's
Impressive.
fighting words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't.
interesting.
I'm honestly undecided as to where I think this will sit because it's the quality.
Wow.
Yeah. Ramachandra is asking about the new S-Line 800mm. I mean, in terms of what we know about it, it's on the roadmap.
And it's an 800.
And it's an 800, and it's an S-Line,
Yeah.
presumably.
That's what the interesting bit is. Obviously, the 400 announcement. The 400 has this golden ring, and
It does.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
people say, "Is golden ring better than S?"
That's a really good point. I don't think so. I think they're the same thing. So I think
Yeah.
what we'll see is that any long lenses will have those kind of golden rings on them.
Right.
Nikon was quite keen to have something that kind of is a differentiator between other lenses and so on.
Okay.
That's cool.
So it's difficult to know,
Yeah,
what it
You know,
means.
I liked some of the gold rings on some of the f-mount lenses. So,
Well, the gold ring always also came along with nano crystal coat. It seemed
did.
to go hand in hand. So I always assumed, okay,
yeah.
if it's got a gold
That's
ring, it's a nano
obviously
lens.
no longer the case because
No.
all S lenses have nano crystal coat.
Yeah, fair enough. We don't know the aperture of the 800mm yet, Ramachandra.
You don't
Sorry.
know.
We don't. And Rishi's not allowed to say. So therefore,
He has the lens already for 6 months, for 2 years.
That is not true.
that's not true. Anyway, so, okay, let's deal with some more Z9 questions.
Okay. Yeah.
Now that I deviated slightly. Another battery question. The Ineal 18D, I think we tested this. It
Yes.
doesn't charge on the MH26A, does it?
No, I
No, it
forced
has
it.
to be. It has to be its new charger.
You forced it in and then
No,
you were
actually,
like...
the pins, they all line up, so you don't use force it, but I put it in, I didn't charge it, and I used my MacBook charger, and it charged inside the camera.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that is. It's just the way
Just
it
is the way it is.
Yeah.
But you could charge your old 18C and Bs, I
In
assume,
the-
in the MH33.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing that they chose not to have a dual charger with the Z9.
No, have you seen that also the Z9 charger doesn't have the traditional plug?
No, it's USB-C,
It's
isn't it?
USB-C.
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen it.
So I've just been
Yeah.
doing the same thing where I charge that charging block
Yeah.
with my MacBook charger.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. You charge one battery in the camera, and the spare one can be on the charger, and they will charge simultaneously.
Yeah.
Compared to the MH26, which charges one battery at a time.
It's true. So it's actually a more efficient
Exactly.
power delivery system.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense. Terry said, is Nikon prepared to build all these orders quickly? They have horrible history trying to fill orders. D850, cough, cough. I have actually been comparing this launch to the D850 for those who kind of wanted a comparison. We've had more orders of the Z9 than we had of the D850. And the D850 in our 13, nearly 14 years of being here was the biggest launch that either of us had experienced, I think, in terms of pre-orders.
That's true. That's true.
So
Did you have problems in the UK with D850 stock?
yeah, it wasn't as bad as the US.
No, the US was significantly
Yeah.
worse.
The US was
right?
awful. It took us about 6 months to clear our back order list,
Okay.
but we had 80 people.
Because I don't know what happened with the US, but I think there was something specific
Yeah.
that happened there that didn't affect us as much.
I think we got 60 units on day one.
It was 54.
54, yeah.
Remember it very, very clearly.
Which is
'cause
pretty good.
it's my job.
Yeah, it's it was higher than normally you would get because we
Yeah.
get maybe 20, 25 units on the day one.
Exactly, and sometimes even less, depending on what it is.
That's true.
So if you are on a Z9 pre-order list with us or anyone, in fact, just be fully prepared that there will be a wait. We can't imagine that Nikon will send everything in one go. I don't know how they'd physically be able to produce 40,000 odd
Yeah.
units if China is to be believed.
Well, hopefully they're making cameras right now, so the
As we speak.
initial shipment may be 2 months worth of production or something.
Yeah, let's see.
Fingers
But
crossed.
anyway, be prepared. And hello to Klaus Hermann in Germany, who says we're the dream team. So that's
Yay.
nice.
Yeah.
It's always nice to
We should do
hear.
it every week.
Yeah, you just come by every
It's an
Friday.
awful dream.
It's a nightmare team.
Yeah.
No, we're all good. Okay, so there's a couple of other questions. Do you have any more in that section about dynamic range?
Yeah, so sensor, we talked about dynamic range, color science. Let's talk about ISO, sensitivity, and noise level. So how does it compare to D6 and then also D850 and Z7 cameras?
It's not going to be D6 because D6 is a lower megapixel count.
So D6 is a king of low light, basically, yeah?
So
Pixels are bigger.
if you're expecting low light performance to the level of D6, that's just not the case.
Okay,
Right.
so now let's compare to 46 megapixel cameras like D850 and the Z7.
Yeah, so it's better than both of those.
It's better
Okay.
than both of those.
From what
Okay.
I've seen, from what I've been told, it's better than both of the other 45 megapixel cameras, but I would not expect it to be better than a D6.
Okay.
And I know this is a bit of a weird question, but from a person that uses Z6 primarily and doesn't see a huge difference between the Z6 and the Z6 II, like very, very, I find
Not
it quite
exactly the same
It's-
comparison, but
no.
it is, yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
if I was just going in for the low light performance, would the Z9 be so much worse that then I would just be like,
That's
no.
interesting because I've not actually compared it to Z6. I've literally everything has just been done on like Z7.
Well, let's do
Which
it
makes
now.
sense.
So let's just,
Fucking memory
so
card.
no, I will. I can take a look at that.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
curious, really, because
Yeah, no, I
low
get it.
light is what I go for. I don't shoot fast.
Like, don't get me
frames per second.
wrong. It's all the noise looks different. Like as you guys know, like all D5, D6, D4, they always look different. It's
And much
not,
more pleasing,
yeah.
I'd say. Yeah.
So the noise is considerably different to what you would get out of like a D850, or it's on the same level, or the quality of noise that you would expect from a D5 or a D6. It's just not going to give you the same, noise performance. The key one as well is it can't go as high.
Right.
It can't go as high as a D6 or
Yeah, which
a
I
D5,
think
so.
is probably a logical choice
Yeah.
because what's the point in having 50, 100K ISO and then
And it's
not
the
being able to
first
use it?
flagship with ISO 64.
Yes.
Which I think is like one of those hidden gems because there's not many other companies that do ISO 64 natively.
Yeah.
on the flagship. So we're not looking at D850. So
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of cameras might go to like ISO 50 or whatever, but it's not native. And ISO 64 I think
Sony.
is sometimes looked over. So ISO 64 for me is something I always shoot at for even since we had that like in D810 and D850. So I would much prefer to see a lower ISO versus a higher ISO personally.
Right. Interesting question from Siddharth on the files. I don't know if you would know this, but do they have more chroma noise than the Z7, Z7 II? Does it give an odd cast, like a green cast?
It looks less. Like I was actually really surprised looking at the files that I've looked at that there's pretty much zero color noise in any of them.
Oh, good.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay, excellent. I have to say thank you to Joy and to Toro Porco, and who says Ricci is amazing. Ricci is amazing.
Thank you.
Please buy him a coffee as well. He doesn't drink coffee.
Did you say Ricci is amazing? No?
Ricci is amazing, but we will buy him a beverage of his choice.
Some kombucha.
That's right.
Extra percent alcohol.
And thank you to Gary as well for your contributions to the
Thank
Coffee
you all.
Fund. Very much appreciated. Pedro says, can we expect more megapixels? I mean, you can answer that question.
No,
but-
who knows? I think we're in a situation where megapixels are slowly increasing.
Yeah.
I do think that we'll see like a new normal baseline megapixels. You know how like 24
was like,
was like the baseline.
It's
for
been a
everything?
while, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there might be a new baseline. I have no idea what that baseline looks like, but I'm sure that megapixels will always increase. There'll always be a point where they'll become a little bit more redundant because the more megapixels you have, the sharper your lenses need to be, and the more diffraction you get. And there's trade-offs, right?
You know what I'm thinking is like now we switch into high-res screens. So lots of people have 4K screens or 2.5K screen. You look at MacBooks; they are higher than 1080p. So when you start to look at 24 megapixel file, you start to zoom in. You can't actually zoom in much because the resolution of the screen itself is quite high. So I think we get into the point where the resolution is so high, then we need something like 46 megapixels.
I think as 8K displays become norm, all of a sudden like 24 megapixels.
Yeah,
doesn't feel enough.
No, because
that's true.
an 8K display is like 33.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden your display, and this would be like one of the first times that a display has a higher resolution, at least in recent years, displays have lagged behind megapixel counts of cameras.
That's true. My thinking is, when do you think 8K TVs are going to become a norm?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Was it 5-10 years?
I think it's.
I think
it's,
only now 4K
yeah.
is like, you know, if you're going to buy a new TV, it's always 4K. But that took a number of years to happen before it was commonplace.
I mean, you can obviously easily go and buy good 8K TVs now.
That's true.
And they're not that much more expensive than 4K TVs, but yeah, like you say, it's the content.
Yeah.
That's true.
If there's no content, no one will buy it.
No,
I'm still rocking my plasma.
exactly.
No, OLED this time.
That's the way. So then, what was your next question?
Well, the next big one is RAW. So we don't have uncompressed RAW anymore, and the purist in me cried inside
very sad.
because I shoot uncompressed, and I know it's not very useful because lossless is as good as uncompressed. But
Have you ever done a test between lossless and
no,
uncompressed?
I just feel like uncompressed is
wasting
the
your own time.
exactly
Psychological
So,
thing.
it's a psychological thing, exactly. So obviously we lost this now. Okay, I can live with that. But then we have now high efficiency RAW. There is no definitive data anywhere saying how good it is compared to the compressed lossless. So can you give us a little bit more information? Because even at the streams I've seen, there's people say, well, it's really good. I need to do more testing. What are your findings so far to date?
So like, you are right. It's hard to put a numerical number on it or data on it because there's different levels of compression.
Yeah.
If there's compression, there's something that's going somewhere, unless it's lossless. Right?
Yeah.
But if there's compression happening, it's being compressed somewhere. And I think for certain types of photography, certain textures, certain highlights, certain shadows, that you might see differences that other people won't see. From what I can see, there's no difference.
Right.
So
it's
Fair
better than SRAW format that Nikon had previously.
100%, because
Okay.
S-RAW was 12-bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say that
Yeah.
that was the bit.
A lot of people say it was kind of pre-baked, so it wasn't true RAW in its respect.
Well, I mean, I think it was still classed as a raw file, but yeah, I appreciate that, you know, to get the file size down, there was a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, I mean, I'm not there yet. I've not made my own decision as to which file format I'm going to use. But from everything that I've looked at so far, and I've looked at 5-stop exposure pools, I've looked at highlights, I've looked at shadows, I've looked at textures. It's tough. Even in high ISO, I think the most noticeable difference is at high ISO shots.
Okay,
Right.
So
Interesting.
so it's very, very close then.
yeah, there is a difference when it comes to high efficiency, but high efficiency start and lossless, it's hard. It's really hard. And I'm looking at these at like 200, 300, 400%
Wow.
to see
Okay.
any differences.
That's interesting. Do you think, will you post your findings, well,
Yeah.
like your comparison?
I don't know whether that will be first or the 24 to 120 will be first. I don't know. One of those
Do a
two.
vote on your
Yeah,
channel and
I
just let
probably
people.
should.
Yeah,
I probably
just
should.
see
What do
they
you
want.
think is more important?
Yeah, exactly. Because it's,
But
it's
the
difficult.
key thing that's holding me back is anything that I do is still technically based on pre-production, right? So
Very true. It's a prototype.
it's a lot of work to put into a pre-production raw file that could
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because camera has a firmware version 1.0, and it's a pre-production camera.
That's a bit misleading.
Yeah,
Because Nikon can just update the camera and it'll still be version 1.0.
that's true.
So don't feel like there's only one 1.0. There's not.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. Okay, that's good to know as well.
you
so-
only get like the final 1.0 when it's actually a
Yeah.
product.
Right,
actual
and when it
production unit.
comes out of one of those now black and yellow boxes
Yes.
instead of the gold
That's
boxes.
the one.
Yeah.
There's a room of firmware that runs on Windows 11.
I hope not.
Now, I was going to there's a slightly less relevant to Z9 question, but a few people are asking if you think that Nikon will develop any more DSLRs. I mean, just personally,
Yeah,
what's
I
your
mean,
feeling? Because you don't necessarily know.
It's a tough. I don't know the right answer to that question. If I was to answer that from a personal perspective, I've been shooting mirrorless now since the launch of Z. I absolutely loved my D850.
Yeah.
And it's a tough call to say that, you know, or to give up DSLR and say that mirrorless is the way to go. And I honestly don't know. I feel like that, you know, the official answer from Nikon is that we'll always respond to customer demand.
Yeah.
And so on. But the key thing for me is I've not missed anything,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
There are benefits to shooting Zs, like the lenses.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
just they are just a lot better, and you just can't access those. I do feel like the D850 is sometimes limited if you're not using it with the right lenses. So to get the most out of the camera body that you have, not only do you need the right body, but also then the right lenses to go with that.
And yes, and I think that mirrorless in some way does make things just that little bit easier for those who maybe aren't as skilled at shooting with high resolution sensors, I'd say. I mean, I know that I really struggled with the D800 and the D810 was better. D850 was, I kind of forced myself into that camera.
I mean, the D850 was incredibly unforgiving.
Yeah.
And Nikon know that. Like when they launched the D850, they knew they were going to get loads of photographers that were like, this camera's soft.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. And the camera's not soft, it's the technique.
The shift between D700 and D800 was ridiculous because
painful.
I remember one chap came in and says, my portraits look soft. I was like, okay, let's have a look at the shutter speed. Yeah, you're shooting at 30s of a second. But on D700 it looks sharp. Okay, let's magnify it to the same resolution as D800. Let's have a look together. Can you see the motion blur? Yes, that's the reason.
Yeah, exactly. It's really, it's something that we now think of, whereas, a few years ago wouldn't have even had a consideration.
No, not at all.
But I do think that the Zs just generally are a bit more accessible in that sense.
And I just want to be as open and as honest to everybody that, whatever camera works for you is the camera that you should shoot with, right? If you still love using your D90, then use your D90. If you've still got a D3, use a D3, right?
D40X.
We have a D90 for repair at Nikon UK, and apparently they can still repair it. I mean, it's been there for 4 months because they're waiting for parts. But,
but hopefully it won't come back unrepaired.
They found the parts finally, so it's coming back.
That's awesome. Okay, in terms of, a few of you were asking for us to do tests. Obviously, we're not going to be able to necessarily do tests live, but Ricci does lots of tests all the time with the gear that he has at his disposal. So did you do a video on the 100 to 400?
Yeah.
You did?
I posted the 100 to 400 before I posted my Z9.
How did I miss that? Okay,
obviously.
Well, that's outrageous. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are some comparisons. There are going to be very specific. Everyone's going to want a specific test, like, compare this to the 300 PF or the 500 PF or the 80 to 400. Someone said to me, I'm mentioning no names, said that the 100 to 400 is sharper than the 180 to 400. 180 to 400.
Yeah, that's the lens I compared it to in my video.
Is that the lens you compared it to?
And the 100 to 400 is sharper than 180 to 400?
I think they're about the same, but there are circumstances where that does look better, yeah.
Outrageous.
Wow. Can you repeat the same answer again? 7200 with teleconverter versus 100 to 400, because it's not told enough, but it's apparently everyone keeps asking as well. It's freely available, this information online, but which one is better, basically?
Once more.
It's tough because so this is one of the things I always try and tell myself is that I have different expectations to other people.
Right.
What I think is sharp, someone else might not think is sharp.
Sure.
Or what I think is soft might be good enough for somebody else. And personally, the 180 to 400 at 400 versus a 70 to 200 with a 2x teleconverter, I would choose the 100 to 400 every day.
Right.
But to a lot of other photographers, the 70 to 200 with a 2x teleconverter might be sharp enough. To me, the 100 to 400 is the better choice because it is sharper.
Interesting.
But it comes down to what your expectation is of using a teleconverter, what your expectation is of having a 70 to 200 2.8, because a 70 to 200 2.8 without any teleconverters is not, it's better than a 100 to 400 if you're shooting things within that focal length. So there's positives and negatives to either side. It's not a clean answer.
So if you're primarily shooting at 400, then get a dedicated 100 to 400.
400.
If you shoot on a shorter end, then get 70 to 100.
Yeah, if you shoot on the shorter end and you've got a teleconverter and every now and again you might want to shoot at 400, then the teleconverter option is great because you get the main benefit of a 70 to 200 2.8.
Yeah, which is a beautiful lens.
Yeah,
I
if
mean,
you're like a
it's amazing.
sports wildlife photographer and you're mainly always between 300 and 400, the 100 to 400 is simple.
Makes sense, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. To Yaya, who was asking, he said, really nice to see you chatting with Ricci. I have a question regarding MPS. I don't know about the rules of MPS in Canada. In the UK, you don't need a sponsor. You just need to fill in certain requirements.
That's one of the things that is always difficult to answer because MPS is different all around the world. There's not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They're not the same all over the world. So unfortunately, I'm not sure how that would work in Canada.
No, I mean, in the US, it's like a paid for membership scheme.
Yeah.
In the UK, you have to have, I think, at least 5 pieces of pro equipment.
Yeah, so that's like bodies and then lenses.
Yeah, and then you also obviously have to be a professional. You have to make your income and your living from photography. But there's different requirements in different countries. So unfortunately, we can't give you a direct answer to that one. But I would, definitely point you back in the direction of MPS Canada for that. And there's a couple of other people answering that question. But as I say, I think it's different in every region. So who knows? What's the next question from the comments?
So, performance of Z9 with f-mount lenses, so dot focus performance. Is it as good as Z-mount lenses?
Yeah. So like one of the things that I think sometimes got overlooked is that if you, like on my Z9 video, pretty much everything that I show from an autofocusing point of view is shot on f-mount. There's like a couple of examples where I had the 100 to 400 because I had the 100 to 400 very late. So there's like a couple of examples I put in there with the 100 to 400, but pretty much everything else is shot on f-mount. So all of the Kingfisher shots, that's all f-mount. All of the shots of the surface, that's all f-mount. I mostly used f-mount lenses, and I was amazed at the performance of the 500mm 5.6.
My favorite lens.
The 600mm f4.
Yeah.
The 180 to 400, the 120 to 300 on a Z9 is insanely good.
It's an amazing lens.
Yeah.
It's your new wish list lens.
After using it in Cat Sanctuary, it was just
it was seamless to the point that I was like, I just keep using these lenses.
Well, you see, naturally, I would expect them to be a little bit slower than native lenses, but it seems like it's not an issue.
Obviously, I'm using like a 600 f4 FL, not a 600 f4 that's like 2 generations old.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're talking about latest f-mount glass. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm using a 500 5.6 PF, which is new generation. They're all perfect.
There you go. Pedro, to answer your question on the 500 PF with the 2x converter, the autofocus does work. It's slow.
It comes f11, isn't it?
Yeah, 5.6 or thereabouts. It's very limited in terms of your autofocus area, but it works and it depends on what you're shooting. I mean, I've used mine regularly with the 1.4 converter, and I don't see any AF speed difference on that one. But yeah, the autofocus does still work. Have you used it with the 2x, the 500 PF?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you find it?
I just don't like the 2x converter.
Fair enough. Yeah, as I say, I use the 1.4 quite happily. But yes, it does work, just with caveats, basically. So, sorry.
I was just going to say that the one thing about Z9 is that it doesn't really matter how dark the lens is.
Right.
So
fair enough. Yes, I haven't used mine on a Z9.
Yeah, there was actually a question about that. How do f-mount lenses work on the mirrorless body? Because obviously on the DSLRs, you have to open it up and then stop it down. And Z lenses don't have that issue. And as you say, mentioning that aperture actually doesn't really matter on the camera.
So it's not like, obviously like in previous DSLRs, there's a range of DSLRs that will only focus to f8. There's a range that will only, and sometimes it's always like the central part of the focusing points. Like the Z9 doesn't really have any problems with that.
Right. That's good to know as well, because yes, that was what I meant by limited focusing.
You could technically mount an f22 lens and still focus it.
Wow.
I don't know how light it would have to be or how bright it would have to be. I don't know, but
And so in terms of low light autofocus performance, obviously the Z6 I found to be better than the Z7. I assume that the Z6 II and the Z7 II are
they were improved again. So yeah. And
then the Z9 is improved over that in terms of like focusing at minus. Is there a
so
figure?
the Z9 does focus in lower light. You have to be careful though, because there's 2 low light numbers. So there's a low light autofocus when you have starlight view enabled, and there's a low light autofocus when you don't have starlight enabled. So
right.
You have to be careful.
That's good to know, because I got confused.
Actually, someone asked that question about how good the camera is for basically stars photography. And that's the mode that's specifically there.
So there's a mode that specifically drops the frame rate of the screen and the viewfinder through the floor, and so that it basically can expose for a much darker scene. It's not technically changing your shutter speed, but it physically shows you a much brighter scene. That also then allows the camera to focus easier in much low light situations, like astro stuff, hence why it's called a starlight.
Makes sense. And then for just general low light photography, does it go down to, is it -4 EV, -5? I can't remember what it is.
It's like one of the things that is not in my head currently. I think it's like 6.
It's a lot. It's more than the other cameras, but I just couldn't remember how much. Yes, exactly.
I think it's like 6.5 without, and then like 8 with starlight.
Right. Yeah. And have you tested it much in terms of low light AF?
Yeah, I did a lot of birds at sunrise. So there's a lot of stuff that I filmed in 8K whilst using bird tracking, whilst shooting before sunrise.
Yeah, while streaming with Matt Irving at the same time.
On Bambara Beach. So there's, low light performance for me has been, well, one of the things I always say to somebody is that if I don't notice a problem, then it's good, right?
Okay,
so low light performance hasn't caused me a problem, so therefore I must think that it's good.
Yes.
So,
okay, fair enough. Because one scenario, for example, for wedding photographers is shooting in churches where you're not allowed to use flash or anything like that, and then you're trying to autofocus on people in dark suits usually, and then you've got the contrast of the bride often in white, but it's always a tricky autofocus situation and setup.
Well, like one of the things that happened with Z6s and Z7s was that your exposure was linked to your autofocus. And that was why if you turn off apply settings to live view, your camera always found it easier to focus because it wasn't having to deal with, is it too bright, is it too dark? Because if your subject was too bright, the camera wouldn't focus on it. If your subject was too dark, it wouldn't focus on it. And that would cause you problems in certain situations. So you could always just turn apply settings to live view off, and then you'd get much more consistent autofocus.
This is a good tip.
You're not messing around with exposure.
Yeah.
Granted, you no longer get
what you see is what you get.
What you see, what you get. You have to look at your exposure bar.
Right.
But from a Z9 point of view, that setting of apply settings to live view no longer exists. There are 2 other settings there instead.
What are the options?
So you have an option of you see what you get.
Yeah.
And then you have a custom view. So you can customize shadows, highlights, you can customize white balance, you can make your own view basically. But the fundamental message is that on a Z9, autofocus is always separate from exposure.
Yeah, exactly. For the 476 of you that have joined us this afternoon, thank you so much. Please do give us a like. I know I just nag you, but please do. It's very much appreciated.
226, like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. So we can bump that up so it's a little bit more on par with the views.
No, what it does actually tells the internet that the stream is good. So people who just browsing on YouTube, they say, oh, let's click on that. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
And then we have like some random people who expected us to talk about something else.
My A1.
No, I did have
I came to talk about washing machines.
Exactly.
I had a chap who said that he'd accidentally left his YouTube app open on a recipe video the night before.
Wow.
And by the following morning, he'd found our channel. It had link, and then he ended up with us. Didn't know anything about cameras, but he found it really fascinating.
Is he a subscriber now?
Probably. Yeah. We're not going to be stopping at dead on quarter past, just so you know, because we still have a lot of questions to go through. So brace yourselves.
Yeah, 24-hour stream.
No, I don't think we can do
yourself.
that. And thank you to David for your contribution to the coffee fund. I'm actually learning more about that because I always wondered why you said to me, I always turn off apply settings to live view. Yeah. And I was like, but I love it. So why would I turn it off? But that makes sense.
That for me is like, I've always done that. I've never liked and this is going to be quite controversial.
Yeah.
I've never liked you see what you get.
But I love it.
Because I was just so used to.
He needs a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I was so used to just looking at the exposure bar.
Yeah.
And I never really changed back.
I trained myself out of that after that. I ditched my D850.
But I can see the problem for studio work where you have flashes and it's really difficult to autofocus because you don't see it. So you need to either don't apply the settings to live view to focus, but then you can't preview the flash. So it's always a compromise there.
Yeah, exactly. Jaspreet did ask when the new firmware will be out. I mean, we're assuming it will be early next year because
and there's no specific date that I can give you, unfortunately. But next year
at some point.
It's 8K 60 frames per second raw in camera as a free firmware. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, nice.
Pretty good.
And thank you to Brian for your contribution to the coffee fund. See, you said we need to get him a T-shirt that he doesn't like what you see is what you get, and John's bringing up the I shoot raw. I shoot raw when I have to. I still have to.
I'm just happy to be here. That's how it is. Yeah.
We just get T-shirts for everyone.
Tilly.
Okay, so then we have some questions on Flash.
Yeah. So since it was nice kind of segue to Flash. So tell us about the whole confusion A1 has 400 of a second sync and Z9 has 200 of a second flash sync. So,
So much confusion.
yeah, could you tell us, because obviously, people say, oh, the internet, A1 is, this and that. Could you just share a bit more light? So what's exactly happening there? Or as our viewer asks, what happened?
What happened?
What happened,
So I'm not a Sony specialist.
Yeah.
I used to be.
Yeah.
Ah,
That's
yes.
the secret. I used to be. But
I know what t-shirt I'm going to get you. Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, that 400th of a second is mechanical,
Okay.
not electronic.
Yeah.
So Z9 doesn't have mechanical shutter.
No,
Yeah.
no. So as far as I'm aware, the A1 electronic is like 250th.
Okay, and Z9 is 200. So between
Yeah.
200 and 250th,
You can choose 250th.
Yeah, you can.
I think Seth on the stream with Matt Irvin said he shot on 250th and was absolutely fine.
So you can either choose 250th or 200th, and then
Okay.
obviously anything higher is auto FP.
Yeah.
Okay.
So which is high speed sync.
Okay.
Yeah, which is what I just used the Joe McNally principle of always put it on the highest
Yeah.
auto FP and
You
just,
would set it to 250th of a second,
And hope for the
and
best.
then if you go higher, it goes into high speed sync.
yeah, exactly. And I've just lived by that principle
Yeah.
whenever I shoot flash because I don't shoot flash very often, but if I do, it's going to be in that. I'm not going to do anything else.
Yeah, that's the thing. You got HSS functionality built into lots of studio lights nowadays. So that thing number one. The thing number two is someone asked what they're going to call front curtain sync and rear curtain sync nowadays because there's no curtain there.
No.
So
Rear readout. I think it is just still called rear. So for
Just for the sake of simplicity
Yes.
and to not add another term to confuse
Yeah.
people.
okay, this is the question actually that just came up,
Yeah.
and it's based on Nikon announcement of partnership with Nissin and Profoto.
yeah,
My question is about Nikon flash guns. We had SB5000 for last,
Yeah,
4 or 5 years.
sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
it is rear curtain sync.
There we go.
Rear curtain sync,
The
perfect.
word is the
Yeah.
same.
So we have SB5000 released for quite some time. Are we going to see new Nikon flash guns, or is that where are we going to
I'm
Nissin
not
and
sure.
Profoto?
I honestly don't have an answer about whether we're going to go down Nikon flash guns or whatever. But Nikon are very keen to have the Z9 supported by many other brands, even more brands than than currently is available. So Nikon are very keen to work with other brands to make this camera as compatible as possible.
Like Sigma and Tamron,
Well,
perhaps.
that would be nice.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
We have our limits.
I've definitely seen a list of brands of people that Nikon are keen to add support for.
So it's basically sharing protocols of how the camera works with a flash gun.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people already have existing flashes and they have existing setups, and Nikon want that to kind of fit into that as easy as possible.
Yeah, without having to change everybody's kind of workflow, if possible. So that's good. Eric says sensor cleaning has been a pain for many digital cameras. How good is the Z9's sensor cleaning? The Z9 has a sensor protector, which is nice.
It does. So there's obviously that sensor shield that drops down. There's also an anti-static coating in front of the sensor as well that is supposed to stop dust sticking to it.
Have you done some tests? Have you thrown dust at the sensor?
No, I mean,
or-
surprisingly, it's actually really difficult for me to get dust on my cameras. It happens every now and again, but there is like a bit of a joke between me and Neil that he's awful at it, and I'm really good at keeping my camera clean. So I don't know.
I'm terrible.
I honestly wouldn't be able to test it other than chucking loads of dust on it and seeing
Open your Hoover and
Just loan it to me for a week, and then we'll see whether or
We'll
not
see what
this
happens.
or give it to Joe McNally
So if I
and
check,
we'll take it to the desert.
if I check Rob's one, it'll be filthy, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So he opened it.
I only changed the lens
Sure.
twice on his camera.
Sure. No, in all honesty, it happens to me every now and again, but it's not something that I've been aware of.
Okay, fair enough. I'm personally very excited about this sensor protector because it was something that I wished had existed in all of the generations
I
of
call it
Z camera.
psychological.
Yeah, but you never want to use your actual shutter. That's the problem.
Yeah.
No.
So it
No,
has
no.
to be something different.
And
It has to
you
be
don't want to.
something-
Do you want? Can you poke that cover, or you wouldn't really?
You
Why
could do
would
if
you
you wanted
poke
to.
it?
When you get your Z9, knock
Poke
yourself
it.
out.
How much is the replacement?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like a harder material
Yeah.
than a normal shutter.
It's a much more protective thing rather than just using the same thing like a shutter again. So there you go. But hopefully that answers your question. There's like a couple of people who were saying, why are you not talking about the Z8?
Well, I have a question here, which basically...
Funny enough.
Yeah, here we go, exactly. So, I just have a question that says Z8. There's no sentence on it. It just says Z8. But
Z8.
we're going to leave it for now. You mentioned in one of your streams that basically you got 8K RAW video and you can extract a RAW still out of it. Is that correct?
No, so like when you're shooting 8K, you can take a still out of 8K.
But it's a JPEG.
I've not been able to test that with 8K RAW because 8K RAW is not available yet. So
but if it would be 8K RAW, it would be an F file or would be still JPEG?
I think it's still a JPEG, but I wouldn't know until I have access to 8K RAW videos. So to clarify that, when you're currently recording 8K in the camera, you can't shoot stills whilst recording video at the same time. What you would do is you would, in the camera, go to playback, you look back at the video, choose the still that you want, and you cut that still out of the. And 8K.
It's all done in camera.
You can do it in camera. You can do it with existing cameras.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I don't pull stills out of my videos.
No,
I just don't
that's
do
fair
that.
enough.
I'm
But
not
it is a function.
I mean, if you wanted to, you could obviously just shoot at 20 or 30 frames a second. And
that's true.
You can also do that. Yeah, exactly. Okay, there's a few other questions revolving around that. Can we expect 30 frames per second? What's HE?
High efficiency.
High efficiency RAW. Sorry, the abbreviation hasn't quite sunk in yet. In future firmware updates.
I mean, yeah, it's a possibility. Well, it might be a possibility. I honestly don't know. I appreciate that like high efficiency RAW is a smaller file size, so therefore, in theory, the camera could process or deal with a smaller file size at a faster frame rate. But quite clearly, that's kind of a common sense thing, and I feel like if they could do it, they would have already done it.
Right, fair enough.
So if we could have done 30 frames a second in RAW, I feel like we already would have done that. I don't know what will change over time. And as development of the camera becomes better, or as things become less processing intensive, maybe that might be something that's offered by firmware. But I honestly have no idea.
All right, so process is really, really fast. Yeah, can it run Crysis?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's all I need to know.
That's very important.
Ultimate setting.
That's right. And so NRAW.
Yeah.
So
you see, he put HE RAW. He should put HEN RAW. So HEN RAW.
HENRAW.
You see?
Yeah,
that's the abbreviation.
Would that have worked? Jaspreet said, one article says NRAW will take less storage than other RAW video codec, but will have the same level info details. Do you know? I mean, I don't know.
That is true.
Yeah.
I can't say too much on it, but NRAW for video looks really promising from like a file size point of view. But yeah, until that's available, there's not much else I can say.
So speaking of the codecs, we've got ProRes, which is a part of it. So in Z6 and Z7, I think you have B-RAW or BRO for Blackmagic recorders as well. Is this something we're going to see implemented as well in future updates?
It's a question that I've been asked, and I honestly don't know the answer because obviously, like you say, Z6s and Z7s have ProRes and B-RAW, and Z9 so far has all been ProRes. So I don't know. Again, it might be something that's added further down the line in firmware, but because it's all internal, I'm not sure.
Interesting.
Okay.
Speaking of internal recording, is there a point of getting, let's say, 8K Ninja or Blackmagic RAW recorders?
It's a tough call, really. I think it more depends on your use case. Like if you need an external screen as an external recorder.
So like overlay, basically, effectively. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If you, I mean, like even with like Z6, right? There's loads of people who say, "Oh, I love using an external recorder because it makes my life easier," and then there's some people who say, "Oh, I hate using an external recorder. I want to do it all internally."
And it kind of adds to the whole bulk of the setup.
Like Z9 is designed to be used internally. You can use it externally if you wanted to, but currently it's.
Is there any benefit in terms of video quality? I'm thinking maybe compression, but we're talking RAW, so it should be technically uncompressed.
Not that I'm aware of. You can dual record, so you can record to an external recorder and a memory card at the same time.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay.
But there's only certain resolutions and frame rates that'll do that.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine. 8K at 60 on both formats, it would be quite difficult.
That's the only thing I could think of.
And John asked if there was any info about the audio, something about 24-bit PCM. Didn't know. I don't know if you've addressed the
good,
audio.
good amps inside.
Yeah, so the preamp inside the camera itself is completely changed from previous cameras.
Well, thank goodness for that.
So it is a different. It's not something that I've looked at extensively, the difference between the two and like the noise floor and all that type of stuff. But I've been told it is better.
Okay.
Yeah. Is internal mic as good as this?
I have no idea.
I would be really surprised considering
be
how
incredibly surprised.
meaty these microphones are. A couple of people are asking a lot of questions about video, just saying that it always seems to take a back seat.
Yeah. I think the key thing is that Nikon's trying to change that. I would agree that in previous launches, it's like, oh, this is a stills camera. It does this, and this, and then it does this bit of video.
Yeah.
But like for this launch, especially with the Z9, it's like it's equally as good at stills and equally as good in video, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's just as good in both sections. So previously, I would have agreed with that, but I think for Z9, there's so much emphasis on what it can do for video, not just what it can do for stills.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
The only thing the Z9 doesn't do from a video point of view is it's not a square box. Like it's
True.
it still has the form factor of a camera.
Yeah.
But you can still get it, like small rig is going to make a cage,
absolutely.
which will allow you to put all the things on it. But also I was quite surprised by lots of video-oriented blogs wrote about the camera and praised it for its functionality.
Yeah. I mean, in all seriousness, some of the things that this does, it puts it right up there with some of the highest video cameras currently. So, yeah.
I've got an interesting question, which was asked me before, and I didn't know the answer. Wendy and Ross Martin said, can we do focus stacking at 20 frames per second? Because this would help to minimize subject movement during a sequence. It would actually be super useful. You don't use focus stacking. I can see you frowning, but just think of it.
At 20 frames per second.
If you could go, do you see what I mean?
Oh, sorry, I'm thinking actually each frame has a focus stack in it. I'm thinking, no, that
It's
you
like,
couldn't do that on the previous cameras, but
No, it's true. You couldn't, but I was just intrigued to know if it would allow you to shoot at a faster frame.
And you know how you can set up bracketing and set it continue slow, and then you press the button and it takes, let's say, 5 shots in one bracketing sequence and stops. So one day focus stacking could do that as well. So you press the button and it just stops at whatever frame rate.
Did you do 3?
no.
How many?
Oh, sorry, no, it's because I've not set the focus correctly.
We're testing it as we speak.
Finally, a good question that we don't know an answer for.
Well, I think it's good to be able to test it live, something that you didn't have the answer to off the top of your head. But it's definitely
But that
helpful.
definitely didn't sound like 20 frames a second.
No, it didn't. It sounded like 3.
I just wonder, shall we throw random questions at Ricci while he's testing the camera and see how he can work under pressure?
Well, that's not 20 frames per second, but
Yeah. It's definitely more than 1 frame a second.
It's much faster than it was on the 6 and 7 and 6.2 and 7.2. So
I mean, obviously the camera is set to 20 frames a second.
Yeah.
But it's not firing at 20 frames a second.
So
Still pretty good.
it's faster, Wendy and Ross Martin, but not perhaps as fast as it could be if you were just focusing on a single subject. That's interesting, though, considering that you can... Anyway, it's a good question. I liked it.
They might have to do something with the speed to make sure the focus motors are accurately moving to the focus step width that you've chosen.
Because focus stacking is such a specific... so you don't just go, okay, vaguely focus on this thing. It's a little bit different to when you're tracking a subject and also shooting at the same time. Okay, so Ganesh asked this question, which I'm going to read out now because I wrote it down at the beginning, was, is it possible to assign subject tracking to a custom function button?
Subject tracking.
Yeah, so you've got your autofocus button on the side, right? On the front side.
Yeah.
So then...
Which lets you change your autofocus mode and your autofocus area.
Yeah, okay. So then...
Do you mean like what people always ask about for like D500 and D850 where they want to like group on a button?
I suppose so. I don't know if
Because
that's what it is.
you can assign an area mode, but currently right now you can't assign switch between animals and people.
That's what I'm thinking, because you got autofocus automatic, which includes both people and animals. But then if you want to switch to vehicle tracking, then you have to switch separately. So I wonder if he thinks about if you can assign, let's say, function button where you just press it and it automatically goes to car tracking. You press it again, it toggles between let's say,
so
people tracking and car tracking.
currently right now you can have a focus button or a function button that will let you switch between like 3D tracking, auto area, or back to wide area large or dynamic or whatever it is, right? But the fastest way you can choose between people, animal, and cars is from your iMenu. That's definitely something that I fed back, that I'd want to have that on a function button.
Yeah.
So
That's pretty good.
It could be added in the future, but right now it's iMenu.
Yeah.
Speaking of function buttons, got a question from Woody. He is asking us to talk a little bit more about recall shooting function. Can it be assigned to function button?
Yep.
And is it similar to D6?
It's actually a little bit more in depth, and it's actually easier to set up. So you can assign it to function buttons, but if I go to custom controls, and then let's say if I was going to assign that to function 1, and then try and find where recall is.
It is in there. It took me a few rounds
It is in
to
there.
find
So
it.
you go to recall shooting function, and then you can choose what you want to set in there. So you can choose your shooting mode, you can choose your shutter speed, your aperture. You don't have to, go and you can basically turn off which things you want to be included, what things you don't want to be included. So you have a lot of choice when it comes to setting your.
Yeah,
That's
a
pretty good.
huge amount of choice when it comes to picking
I
what
don't
you
know if
can
If
recall.
they'll be able to see that. But
Potentially not, because it's a bit
No.
far away.
Yes.
But anyway, I mean, but hopefully that answers your question, Woody, and thank you for that one. He did ask one other question.
Yeah,
Did
is
you read
it, yeah, is it possible to assign a subset in the tracking AF mode to function mode? For example, bird only plus Earphone or animal only plus Earphone.
Gosh, that's very specific.
no, so like you can't ask it to look for different animals,
Right.
if that makes sense. So you have animals, that includes all animals.
Yes.
Birds, animals,
Yeah.
fish.
You have
all-
people, which includes all people, faces, torsos, heads. And then you have all vehicles, which includes planes, boats, bikes, bicycles, cars.
Yeah.
You can't go
Yeah.
and just ask for planes.
I think it keeps
boats
it
as
simple,
well?
though.
Or not
Sorry?
boats as well?
I'm not sure.
No, okay.
But it
I
definitely.
think so, actually.
Yeah.
I've seen
Simplifies
pictures of sailboats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's trains, planes, automobiles, and boats, if I remember correctly, and bicycles of all form, both motor and pedal. Okay, so now Suraj said, just wanted to add, sometimes you're in 3D tracking, but suddenly want to switch to single point. Can this be assigned to custom function?
Yes. Yeah, so that's the idea. So if you're in 3D tracking, you then have a button that you push and it goes to single point. So
Right.
that's something that's been available in our DSLRs for a long time, but not been available in Zs
Right.
until Z9.
Yes. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Did you have another question from, there was one that I noted at the bottom of our questions. We talked about noise performance.
Yep.
Okay, and then sort of slightly less Z9 related question, but just generic question, is if you wanted to have 4K in a Nikon camera, but you don't want to go down the Z route, what would be your suggestion for the best option?
D850, really.
Yeah.
Or, well, no, sorry, 780.
780.
Yeah.
I think the 780 is one of those cameras that often just gets forgotten about.
Yeah, no,
And it's a great
780, 100%. Just because the autofocus in video is so
Yeah.
much better.
Best live view, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've
and
ever,
the 780's 4K is super sampled,
right.
whereas the D850s are not.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, if you've ever tried to shoot video with a DSLR, it's painful unless you've
Not the 780.
but not with the D780, because
No.
you've got that hybrid autofocus system that camera has. Whereas with any of the other bodies, whether they shoot 4K or not, the autofocus system, you ultimately have to shoot in manual focus really to make life easier. There's one. Catch up.
Can I ask you about the Z6, Z7 firmware? It's on
No.
Or maybe it was
No.
before the stream. So.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is at what point it's going to black out for them. I'm just keep it on that screen for me for a second.
London turned off the lights.
Yeah, we just went
Yes.
dark for a second there. Yeah, it's right at the end there. I don't want to hear myself.
No.
Anyway, we're back.
We're back.
That's the main thing. Our battery ran out in our Z6 II.
No, we're cutting to commercial break.
We cut to a commercial break where there were no commercials, and
No.
then we're back. Yes, it was actually just battery. We don't normally stream for more than an hour. So I think it was, the camera was like, hold on, no, I'm done.
We might now get EH7P adapter
Yeah.
plugged into the AC,
Here we
isn't
go.
it?
It would be good. Anyway, yes, coffee time.
So yeah, my question was, so obviously rumored A7 II, Z7 II and Z6 II.
A7
We
II.
streamed over an hour. You see, I'm dozing off right now. So obviously, it's been rumored that it will improve autofocus performance. And obviously the new Z6 and Z7 Mark I firmware just came out, which significantly improved autofocus performance. So do you have anything else to share there? Do you know anything you can share with us? Or
I think we've just obviously updated Z6 and Z7.
Which I'm really glad about,
Yeah.
actually. 'cause
so it's a good sign.
Yeah,
in a way, isn't
there's
it?
like a lot of people who were like, oh, Z6 and Z7 aren't going to see any more firmware updates and all that type of stuff. And I think it's good to see that Nikon are actively improving cameras that are now 3 years old. So it shows a lot of commitment, and also some of the things that they can just do when given time. I think there is sometimes a little bit of impatience.
Yeah.
That's true.
And if you give companies time,
Yeah.
they can make some really cool stuff. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure over time there will be some new focus updates, but what they look like, I honestly have no idea. When they're coming, I have no idea. If they ever arrive, I have no idea.
But the problem is they don't teach patience at school. So that's the problem. But my question was as well about, okay, we obviously got this latest cutting edge technology. How much do you think can trickle down into existing bodies, into the existing models? Because obviously, the processors of Z6 and Z7 Mark II are relatively slow compared to Z9 processor.
You're obviously not going to get things like blackout stuff and things like that, because that is to do with how the processor talks to the sensor. It's a fundamental technical change. There might be things that are added, like there was. I'm trying to remember what camera it was that launched that borrowed the AF algorithm from like the D5. I'm pretty sure it was like the D850 or something.
No, interesting.
So there are algorithms that can be put into other cameras, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can put the same modes or the same functions into a camera.
Yeah.
So you can improve on what you've learned from a higher end camera, but there are still going to be things that only a Z9 can do.
So hardware limitations.
There's always hardware. There's hardware limitations of a Z9. There's like everybody wants everything to do everything, and there's always going to be a limitation somewhere of what the current technology can do, right?
No such thing as the perfect camera.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the first releases where, when I heard about the release of the camera specifications, you always think, okay, well, I'm sure the internet is going to say, oh, this is better, this is bad. And it's the first camera where I thought, well, no, it's all cutting edge.
Yeah, no one's going to complain about this.
There's nothing better. There's literally nothing better there, so it's amazing.
What I would ask though is, do you know if you'll be able to update the firmware via SnapBridge with the Z9?
I don't know.
No? Fair enough.
I'm pretty sure you can, no?
I mean, presumably, if it's the same as every other,
Yeah.
camera, that was updated not that long ago.
Quick question. So NX Air and NX Tether, and I know you haven't had a chance to play with them.
No. I have Tether, but not Air.
So Tether is free software, isn't it? It doesn't support D5, according to Nikon. So
well, the D5 doesn't have any. It doesn't have like SnapBridge capability or anything like that. So it has no way of connecting to something without a WT.
Yeah. So one wishful thinking is people say, well, why won't they make the Capture Control Pro 2 free, because Tether is free?
I think the key thing is that Tether is all about making tethering as easy as possible. It's not designed to replace Capture One.
No, what about the Camera Control Pro 2, the Nikon software?
So that Camera Control Pro 2, I'm sure still does stuff that
Tether doesn't. Okay, that's good to know.
Okay.
Like Tether is Nikon's version of easy to use, works well, tethering software that does exactly what it says it does, and it gets your images from one place to another.
Yes.
That's really good.
I have two things, one of which I can answer, but I will also let you answer. Can using F-mount lenses cause AF fine-tuning variances compared to using Z-mount lenses? A similar question was asked of Rob when he was here on Tuesday. Why do we have fine-tuning when Z lenses are focusing on the sensor? So from your experience, do you find that some F-mount lenses need fine-tuning or not so much?
There is one lens that is actually recommended that you fine tune. It's
You have to remember which it is.
58.
Oh, interesting. It's a very fussy lens, that one.
Yeah,
on every camera.
I'm sure when the Z6 and the Z7 first launched, there was one lens that was like recommended that you would just double check the fine tuning on it. That 58 1.4. But like for every other lens, no.
Okay.
I've not had any issues. But the reason it's there is choice, because there'll be people who would want to fine tune stuff, right?
Yeah, like regardless, they'll want to fine tune every lens that they have in their possession, which is totally fine. That's your prerogative if you want to do that.
So it's easy to leave it in, and it's easy to use, and it's still there.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. And another request was from Beta Keratin, like that handle. Would you be able to show us the different volumes of the electronic shutter sound?
I think that depends on the sensitivity of your microphone.
It's pretty sensitive. We can at least hear the difference. So.
Those are some good mics.
Yes, they're good mics.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like your mic might make it sound louder than it actually is.
True. It's very. They're very
I can put some volume up as well on top of
We
it.
just
lovely.
put it up.
Just so you know my personal preference, I just turn it off.
Yeah, I didn't like it either.
I either put the camera sound to very low or I turn it off because I want to hear it, or I don't want to hear it, or I don't want other people to hear it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So this is currently set to the highest volume,
It's pretty loud.
and then if I set that to the lowest volume,
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Wow, you really can't hear it. Only the photographer would be able to hear that.
yeah.
But that's
So-
really good.
Yeah. And
So,
then
like,
is
I
there a
like that.
medium?
Yeah.
There is, but so I have mine either set to the lowest volume because I can hear it, but then no one else can hear it. So that's
That's medium. So that's probably like your standard. I reckon that on all the marketing material, they probably used the loudest one,
Yes.
so that you could hear it from miles away. But hopefully that answers your question. Okay, we've got a couple more, and then we are going to wrap up because we've been going for nearly an hour and a half, and I think it's definitely coffee time. Sorry, I actually have to read the questions when I do this, obviously. So there's a few more kind of niche questions, like, does the Z9 drive the f long lenses faster than the Z6 and Z7?
I think that the answer to that would be yes, because the camera focuses faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Z6,
So-
Z7 autofocus system limits the performance of long f-mount lens, isn't it, effectively?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, I think drive faster is probably like the wrong term. Like, I think the lenses are still moving as fast as they can. I think what's happening is because the Z9 can calculate autofocus at like 120 frames, it's just doing more calculations, which makes it accurate.
Right.
If that makes sense.
There's accuracy and there's speed.
Yeah.
You could have a very fast autofocus system that then
so
wouldn't be
focuses
accurate.
faster than, I guess.
Yeah, it's tough to say. Like, my 600 f4 just focuses the same on all cameras, like, but it's, I wouldn't say that it,
It's not picky.
It's not fussed about what it's put on.
Yeah.
Jaspreet asks if Nikon have any plans for producing cine lenses for the Z9.
It's an interesting one because we do know that a lot of people are interested in cinema lenses. I think what they're currently looking at is that obviously a lot of Z-mount lenses don't already breathe, so breathing is one of the things that you might want a cine lens for. The other one is linear focusing. So
Right.
Nikon are adding the ability to do a software linear focusing in the Z9. So I think based on the feedback that they get from what that linear focusing is like, what the breathing is like, they might look at doing that at some point, but I honestly have no idea if that's something they're even considering. I don't think so, but you never know.
Yeah,
Fair
I
enough.
personally think let's just release more Z lenses first, just to
Yeah.
fill all the gaps, and
Yeah.
then we can venture into cine glass.
Yeah, exactly. Nick says when photographing people, they're more comfortable when they hear a shutter. Otherwise, they don't know if their photo's taken and when to stop smiling. It's like when people are actually recording a video of you and you think that you're having a picture taken and you just stay like
looking
this
at awkwardly.
Yeah.
for
Are
ages.
we live?
Yes,
That's
exactly.
basically us before
Yeah.
the live stream.
Always, we're waiting for that moment. And then there was another question about the FTZ2. Have you had an FTZ2?
I haven't. That's actually the only thing I've not seen physically.
No,
I've not actually seen an FTZ2 in person. So if anyone else has, please tell me what it's like.
But from what you know, is it basically the same thing without the
Yeah,
bump?
100%. It's exactly the same thing. that it just doesn't do anything extra or special. It just doesn't have the tripod mount in the base.
Yeah, so it won't be faster to autofocus than the existing FTZ. As far as we understand it, the FTZ Generation 1 will slowly be phased out and replaced out by the FTZ 2. My understanding...
So I didn't even know that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Inside info. My understanding is the reason for that is if you have an FTZ 1 on here, then you try and hold the camera this way, the actual tripod mount at the bottom kind of gets in the way of your hands. So
yeah, it's not comfortable. I tried it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not good.
So so it was really out of necessity more than anything else. Whereas with the FTZ 2, you don't have anything there, so you can just put your hands around it and it's fine. Obviously, you've been using it with the FTZ 1.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Did you find it really awkward?
I did. Yeah, I just basically didn't use the vertical grip.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, it's annoying.
You just went like that, like normal.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
I know
how
it's
you've been used
really
to.
funny. I always laugh at other photographers when they do that. So they've got like a full body camera and they're doing this. That's one of my.
It's probably something
one
I
of the
would do
funniest
because
things.
I'm so used
And
to
then
it.
there's me doing the same thing. So yeah.
Excellent. Ganesh B asked for the ability to use the LCD as an AF trackpad when using the EVF. Can you move the AF point with the
Oh, it's like
LCD?
the back screen.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate where that comes from because obviously our 5600 does that.
Right.
So our D5600.
But it's got an optical viewfinder.
It
With,
does.
Yeah, so there's a difference.
But it works well though. So you can use the rear screen on a 5600 to move the focusing point around. In theory, it could be something they add, but I've not seen anything about it.
That's interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. We are basically running out of time, otherwise we're all going to keel over from from just talking incessantly for an hour and a half. I think there've been some amazing questions. Is there anything that you'd like us to ask you?
No, I did see some questions about memory cards. We've not talked about cards.
We haven't. The main reason for that is because you did an entire video dedicated to it. And I was like, if you really are desperate to know the difference between the performances of memory cards, Ricci spent a lot of time actually testing them out, which is great. When we had Rob here on Tuesday, I actually had one of the Delkin Black cards. And on my Instagram stories, I posted me pressing the button and seeing how long it would go. And it went for well over 1,100 pictures, and then I just got tired.
Yeah, I think it was about 1,000 story posts on Instagram, and yeah, you can just follow them all.
Just,
What's your top pick memory card at the moment?
It is the Delkin Blacks.
Okay.
I've not found anything that's as good as them. Angelbird contacted me after I made that video, and they said they're going to send some stuff out to me. So I'm waiting to see what I get from Angelbird.
Could be exciting.
But I'm confident that everything else that I've tested is not as fast as what I get currently from those cards. There are other cards that are very close. Like you wouldn't see the difference between the tough cards and the faster SanDisk cards. They're fine. So that's generally the way that I tend to advise people to go.
Fair enough.
Let's talk about the Xqd cards. So a lot of Nikon users would have the Xqd cards from their Z6, Z7 cameras and also D5, D6 cameras. Would you advise them to use those cards on Z9, or would you recommend them to upgrade to CF Express?
You can use them. Like officially they work, right? There's no.
What about limitations in terms of the size of the buffer and recording speed?
You'll see massive differences in how many shots you can take if you're shooting at 20 frames per second, 30 frames per second. But if you're a studio photographer and you're taking one shot or you're taking like 5 frames or 10 frames a second or whatever it is, then Xqd cards are fine. But they are not great when it comes to the fastest that this camera can shoot at. So
fair
you
enough.
mentioned some cards overheating, and you get some warnings on your Z9. Are those genuinely slow cards?
No. There are a lot of fast cards that get hot.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and especially a lot of medium speed cards that also get really hot. I've had a couple of occasions where my Z9 has kicked back a card hot warning to tell me that my memory card is too hot. Just so we're clear, that wasn't with any Delkin Black cards. That was with other cards.
So you would suggest if you buy an CF Express card with your Z9, then definitely spend some time choosing the right card.
Yeah, exactly. Andy, Ricci's YouTube channel is Ricci Talks. So if you want to go and have a look at those tests and any of his other videos, they're on there. Thank you for all of your lovely comments and questions. We're going to let him have a break now. Then we're going to ask him a load of questions off air. No.
When Z8 comes out, he's going going to show it to us, take it out of the bag. So, we're going to have a good time.
Where did I put my bag?
Yeah, it's a good question.
It's gone. It's
We've
on
hidden
eBay.
it. I'm not going to do the competition this week. I will do one next week, and then we'll launch a new competition for next week and work out what we're talking
Exactly.
about.
So if you can just write down avocado in the comments under the video, that would be absolutely
But spell
fabulous.
it correctly.
Yes, avocado.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
good. And then we'll draw 2 prize winners. You don't know what you're winning. Brilliant. Thank you very much all. Thank you for your contributions to the Coffee Fund, for joining us, for liking. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. We do one of these every week. Thank you to Rishi.
Thank you
Thank
guys
you,
for having
Richard.
me.
Quick plug as well. Rob McNee's interview, who is Nikon NPS guy,
Yeah.
will be out on Monday as well. So watch out for that.
Yes, exactly. He was here on Tuesday, so we did a little interview with him. And final plug, we do stock Delkin Black cards at the shop. They're on our website. So for anyone who was questioning that, we have
Richie, did you say this is the best card for Z9?
Yeah, if you're struggling to get hold of them.
then you can get them here.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all. Have a lovely weekend. Have a lovely week. We'll
Thank you,
see you.
Richie.
Thank you, Rishi.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you next week.